Oh, hey there. You're here about the Playstyle vacation thing. Yes, I've had an excellent experience. The last time I took a vacation, I was playing a variety of games already, of course. I was playing Warframe, Genshin Impact, Hades, and Nova Drift. And the game that I chose to play during that vacation was Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I had waited a fair amount of time to play Cyberpunk 2077, so I had a good idea of how it might fit into my vacation. I knew a lot about it, it had been out a while. And since I knew I had a good fit in a limited period of time, and I mean, this game ends, it's sort of got a story and then you can finish it, I decided to go a step further and play something really unusual to me, just a breath of fresh air made of mods and talent trees, and in this case, mantis blades. The vacation came and went, and I had a very weird time. That's all I'm really suggesting in this video, nothing fancy, but some subtle changes in how I think about fitting games into my life have made a big difference, and I want to share them with you. I'm Zandy, by the way, welcome. I'm going to separate those two components, the vacation and the play styling. I'm going to start by talking about the vacation bit, campaigns as vacations specifically. Let's imagine that I'd started this video by saying something like, hey, you enjoy my videos about the game design behind build systems. You like customizing your playstyle and optimizing to your tastes, right? I've got a game in mind for you, game X, and it's got those things. You can sure make builds in it, and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, and it's really big. There's a lot of stuff in it. It takes a while to get into, but there's tons of it if you enjoy it. You would probably say, you know, that sounds good, but I don't have the time for it, right? Not everyone. Some of you might be excited for that, but I know, certainly speaking for myself, I would say I don't have time. It's not that I'm not interested. I just don't have time. I want to break down what that means. What do I mean when I say I don't have time? You know, it's not that I physically could not possibly find a way to play the game, right? I probably could manage to fit it into my life. Probably most of us could. Really what I mean is that I don't have time I want to use on the game. And it's that change that, of course, you could fit it in, but it's silly to say it that way. We all think of it as not wanting to fit it in, to cram it into our lives because we want to enjoy it, right? Yeah, it's that I want time I want to spend on the game, time that I'm planning to relax with, but that I don't need to be too relaxed. You know, I am going to play a new game and enjoy something new, and video games are maybe not the world's most universally relaxing form of entertainment. You get it. You might say the temptation would be unpleasant. I'm not too worried about that, but something similar is that I might play a little of the game and wish to play more of it, but I just wouldn't have the time, and so I don't want to spread myself that thin. That would be a case where I literally don't have the time to play as much of it as I'd like. I'd rather spend that little bit of time playing more of a game I already want to play more of. You know, you get it. I think that's connected to a second aspect of not having the time, which is about how much the game wants time from you. Games also have amounts of time they'd like. The examples I gave before of ongoing games I'm playing, Warframe and Genshin Impact. Well, Warframe is a game that really allows you to sort of weekend warrior a little bit. If you want to play most of the game in just 2 days on the weekend, that's fine. In a way, it isn't as much in Genshin Impact, where you get a lot of the rewards, most of the rewards, for playing a little bit every day. It's not that it requires more of your time. I'd actually say it requires less. You could play very little every day, but dailies are just a huge thing in Genshin Impact. In a way, it's not that there aren't good dailies in Warframe, but anyway, the games are weighted in ways that makes it feel good to have certain intervals of time for them. But the twist for me is thinking about it positively instead. It's not that I can't play the game. Whenever I'm choosing to play a game or not, it isn't because I can or can't do it. It's because I want, I guess, to have a better experience. I didn't think of it that way before, but that is what it is. I really could play it. I would just enjoy it so much more if I played it when I wanted to, that it's the same as if I can't play it, because the point of playing it is to have fun. So thinking of it that way, games can match better to certain periods of time. Now you're starting to get why I care about this so much. I understand it seems like a minor thing, and I'll be the first to admit it's probably quite common for people to think of things this way to some extent. People already consider when they would like to play certain types of games in their life. I'm sure most of you already do this on some level. I'm just saying that I've had a very good experience of doing it more, and again, thinking it as kind of positively, can you match the game better to a period of time in your life? I bet you can't guess which interval of time I'm going to suggest matching a game to. Vacations for, I called this section campaign style experiences. So we're finally there. When I think about games, especially with their build systems in mind, I tend to categorize them loosely. Right now, I'd say there are maybe 3 that I'm finding useful: session-based games, ongoing games, and now campaign-style experiences. Session-based games, these are your arcade-style things. These are offerings like when I showed you Hades and Nova Drift. You make a build and it resets when you die, generally within one session that's maybe 10 to 30 minutes. It's a loose category, but that's the idea. And then we've talked about these quite a bit already, but Warframe and Genshin Impact are experiences that are, you come back to them, you keep your builds, you've got kind of a roster of builds set up, and you might return to them again and again as new pieces are added to the game periodically. The twist with both of those games is they kind of never end, which leads me to the campaign style experience. Cyberpunk 2077 has a pretty defined ending, and a lot of the time these games, I think it's also useful to think of them as being very linear. So in Cyberpunk, for example, something common in this type of game, not all of them have it, but it's common, is that you cannot respec your trait points or stat points or whatever it is. In Cyberpunk, you can respec things in your talent trees, but you can't respec your hard stats. So you see here, I'm opening a door using the body stat. People would invest in a stat like maybe body early on, and then as their story develops, as they become a mercenary in Night City, they would maybe choose to invest in other things because they'd realize, oh man, tech would have come in handy. I'm going to invest in tech and become a techie. But they don't ever lose that root of having the body stat built as well. They can always kind of jack cars and open doors a little more easily because that's a thing about their character, right? That makes sense. But for someone like me that wants to play the game, have a build experience, and then leave, I don't want to lock something in without knowing its build context. I do feel like being able to respec one time, for example, might not be disastrous for this games, but that's another video. Yeah, and so what I'm getting at is that these are often games that reward you for focusing on their build systems a bit more. I don't think that's unique to Cyberpunk 2077 at all. I didn't feel like I desperately needed to mod it, although if you did, setting aside more time so you can set up a mod build for the game, obviously that's on theme as well. What I'm really getting at here is just that you might want to use the game and a vacation space for the game as a time to try something different, and being able to focus on that could really help. It's kind of a word cloud of things that I think would be helpful, so I'm going to go through those quickly. It doesn't sound that fun, but I think taking notes can be helpful. I knew when I started playing Cyberpunk, for example, that I wanted to try the Mantis Blades, Monowire, there's a rocket launcher. I'd come off watching Cyberpunk Edgerunners. I didn't yet know those things all occupy the same slot on your build. They're all on your arms. I guess it makes sense, but I didn't realize at the time. And so having a note of them, just a notepad document on my computer, really helped me keep in mind that I wanted to circle back to that stuff. I wanted to try all those things before I stepped away from the game for a little bit. You know, maybe I'll come back and play it. We actually know there is some DLC or an expansion coming. But another important factor is that I kind of knew there wasn't going to be a bunch of DLC, right? The game had been out for a few years. And so playing games after they've been out for a while is a great way to scout out when in your life they would fit. I know a lot of people are quite tied to, quite attached to playing games right when they release, but I think there are a lot of benefits to not being attached to that. Now, I haven't talked that much about the playstyle experimenting, but here it is. A vacation from your playstyle. I think that especially when you do the things I've just suggested in the previous section, it feels great to just build something weird. I can find my normal approach to games kind of insufferable sometimes. You know, I have a reason I do it and I find it fun in general, but it's just so full of utility and I have everything and I'm so prepared for things. And that sounds like a weird thing to complain about, but it can be nice to have, playing Warframe normally, getting ambushed by anything, a Lich or a Shadow Stalker or a Syndicate invasion, and being so prepared, having redundancies upon redundancies for what to pull out of my pocket to deal with that thing. Anything goes wrong, I've got my crazy over-modded heavy weapon dropping from the sky to kill it, and I usually don't even need that. It can just be a bit much, and so having the experience of playing something a little more vulnerable can feel great. I mentioned in a previous video concerned with different types of experiences, session-based and ongoing types of build experiences, I called them. I mentioned in that video that it can be useful to think about how those games differ and what they can provide you. In a session-based experience, your build is gone if you don't prioritize success, and ongoing games let you be free of that, but they don't let you be free of your expertise, you know? You already have those tools prepared. Being free to kind of just not know what you're doing that much and have it not be a huge deal is a great strength of a campaign-based experience. You're almost supposed to have done that. You're going to be experiencing way more things for the first time than you would in different types of games. And so the build systems in those games are often more forgiving, which can just be refreshing. In this case, I thought it was useful to get a little specific about my experience in Cyberpunk specifically, but I do think this is going to be very particular to the individual. I both wanted to have an experience where I was a little less prepared and one where I just played a different approach than I normally would. So for example, I was quite keen on body, not a type of stat I'm normally that attracted to. This is your being able to tank through things and soak up damage, and you can see I spent almost no perk points here, but it gives you a lot of health. It just gives you more durability. And I was excited about that. I wanted to use the cyberware that gives you berserk mode, instead of using the Sandevistan, which makes you really fast, and a cyber deck, which lets you hack enemies. I actually started out making a very different build than this, and it was... I'm just the worst sometimes, man. I just can't help myself. I made something so typical of me where I had every single possible tool you could ever want. And it was just too much. I don't think this is that great. Like, I'm not sure this is powerful compared to the other options, but it's interesting. I don't know if Smart Link is that powerful. I used Ballistic Coprocessor for a while, which lets your bullets ricochet, but they kind of have a bit of auto aim too. That's very powerful, but I ended up just finding it boring. Again, it was something I would do. I'm definitely still working on this for my part, a sort of creative experimentation. In a game, it's going to end anyway. I'm not locking myself into a playstyle if I hate it. I also put a lot in the cool tree. Specifically, I thought I would try to gain some confidence with weapons that had good projectile travel time where I had to lead my shot. You've seen me use a throwing knife throughout a lot of this footage. I was interested in Juggler for a while. This means when you defeat an enemy or land a crit with a knife, you get all the knives back. When you throw your knife, you can go pick it up, or there's a cooldown before it comes back. And for a while I used this, but again, it became pretty linear. It got a little boring. It was fun for a while. And I experimented a lot, and having noted all this stuff down and downloaded some mods so I can actually change my build, it worked out a lot better. And so I guess that's my practical example, just making something a bit weird that's kind of a mess. To close out the video, a note on applying these ideas more broadly. Basically, the topic of this video is secretly building a good rotation of games in general. It doesn't have to specifically be fitting a game into your vacations like that. You may not like playing games in concentrated bursts that way. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to use this example of a thing in Genshin Impact. There are these dungeons that you do once and get pretty good rewards for. There's not really a reason to do them at any particular time. They're not really story focused. Often they have some exploration. This one is literally just combat. Sometimes they have a unique buff. This one has one for Catalyze, the reaction between Electro and Dendro. I happen to have a Catalyze theme I really like that is very powerful. So I thought I'd save it for a rainy day when I wanted something nice. You know, make yourself a pan of brownies, kill some people with Catalyze, why not? Look at that big damage. Anyway, and I saved this for a time when I thought it would fit better. Pretty much in the same way that I said I saved Cyberpunk 2077. It doesn't have to be saving those games for those occasions. Of course, you should adapt it to your preferences. The intention is just, and the thing I've enjoyed is just specifically thinking about games as ways to fulfill certain wants of yours, rather than just sort of playing them as they come and go, or whatever strikes your fancy. Playing the game knowing the game is trying to give you a good experience for that period of time. I think Genshin Impact does a pretty good job broadly of giving you a good experience in a relatively short period of time. And so when I want something bite-sized, I don't have to have saved one of these little dungeons. It could be anything. But there's a lot of options. There are definitely also some games that I'm just not really sure what amount of time they occupy, or do I want to avoid this game late at night? Anyway, that's the video. I hope that was an interesting perspective. I hope you enjoyed hearing how I've experienced it, a little window into how I play games as well. I'll see you next time.